Ever wondered why there's so much debate surrounding former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau? Let's break it down. For many, it starts with the economy. The high cost of living and a tough housing market have left lots of people feeling the pinch. Then there are his policies. The carbon tax is a major point of contention, with critics arguing it raises costs without achieving its environmental goals. Gun control legislation has also sparked heated debate across the country. Ethical questions, like the SNC-Lavalin affair, have led some to question his government's transparency and accountability. Plus, there are significant regional tensions, especially in Western Canada, where many feel their concerns aren't being heard in Ottawa. Some also criticize his leadership style, seeing it as more about image than substance. Of course, opinions are diverse, and supporters see these issues very differently. A healthy democracy thrives on these conversations. What are your thoughts? Stay informed and keep the discussion going. Thanks for watching. Ever wondered why Justin Trudeau, once a symbol of fresh, progressive leadership, now faces so much criticism? Despite winning 3 elections, his approval ratings have seen better days. Today, we're diving deep into the reasons why a significant number of Canadians disapprove of their Prime Minister. This isn't about taking sides, but about understanding the different perspectives that make up Canada's political landscape. Let's start with the economy, because that's what hits everyone's wallet. The cost of living is a massive issue. Across the country, from Vancouver to Toronto to Halifax, housing prices have skyrocketed. For many young people and new families, the dream of owning a home feels completely out of reach. Rent isn't much better, eating up a huge chunk of monthly incomes. While this isn't solely a federal issue, many feel the Trudeau government hasn't done enough to tackle the housing crisis. They see policies that seem to fuel demand without adequately addressing the supply shortage, leaving many feeling priced out of their own communities. Then there's inflation. We've all felt it at the grocery store and the gas pump. Prices for everyday goods have climbed, and while it's a global problem, critics argue that the government's spending habits have made it worse in Canada. They point to large deficits and stimulus programs, suggesting they've pumped too much money into the economy, driving up prices and devaluing the dollar in our pockets. The government argues this spending was necessary to support Canadians through the pandemic, but for those struggling to make ends meet, that explanation can ring hollow. The feeling is that their paychecks just don't go as far as they used to, and that's a powerful source of frustration directed at the leadership in power. Now, let's talk about specific policies, and you can't do that without mentioning the carbon tax. The government presents it as a crucial tool to fight climate change. The idea is simple: make pollution more expensive, and people and businesses will find greener alternatives. They also point to the climate action incentive rebates, which are meant to return the money to most households, especially lower and middle-income ones, making them better off financially. However, opponents see it very differently. They call it a tax on everything, arguing it drives up the cost of fuel, transportation, and food, hitting farmers, truckers, and rural Canadians especially hard. They question whether it's truly effective at reducing emissions on a global scale and feel it as an unfair burden during a time of high inflation. This policy has become a major political battleground, symbolizing a fundamental disagreement on how to balance environmental goals with economic affordability. For many, it feels less like an environmental plan and more like another government cash grab that makes life more expensive. Another hot-button issue is gun control. Following tragic mass shootings, the Trudeau government has moved to ban a wide range of firearms they classify as assault style and has proposed measures like a handgun freeze. The government frames these actions as common-sense public safety measures aimed at getting dangerous weapons off the streets. Supporters believe these steps are necessary to prevent violence and are in line with what the majority of Canadians want. But for many lawful gun owners, hunters, and sport shooters, these policies feel like an attack on their rights and property. They argue that these measures unfairly punish them instead of targeting the real source of gun crime, which they say is illegal firearms smuggled from the United States and used by gangs. They see the government focusing on licensed owners who follow the rules rather than cracking down on criminals. This creates a deep sense of resentment and a feeling that the government doesn't understand or respect their way of life. And then there are pipelines. This is where things get really complicated. Trudeau's government has found itself caught in the middle. On one hand, they approved and even purchased the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion to get Canadian oil to international markets, arguing it's vital for the national economy. This decision was meant to appease the energy sector and oil-producing provinces. But on the other hand, their environmental policies and regulatory hurdles have been blamed for the cancellation of other major projects, like Energy East. This has led to criticism from all sides. Environmental groups are furious about the support for any new fossil fuel infrastructure. At the same time, many in the energy sector in Western Canada feel the government is actively hostile to their industry, creating uncertainty and costing thousands of jobs. It's a classic case of trying to please everyone and ending up pleasing no one, reinforcing the idea that the government's energy and climate policies are contradictory. Beyond policy, there's the issue of ethics and trust. This is a big one. The SNCL-Lavalin affair is probably the most well-known example. The controversy involved allegations that the Prime Minister's office put pressure on the then Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, to intervene in the criminal prosecution of the Quebec-based engineering giant. The Ethics Commissioner found that Trudeau had contravened the Conflict of Interest Act. For critics, this scandal was a major blow to the government's credibility. It created the perception of one set of rules for the politically connected and another for everyone else. It undermined the Prime Minister's initial promise of a more transparent and ethical government. Despite the government's explanations that they were trying to protect Canadian jobs, the narrative of political interference and a lack of accountability stuck. This was followed by the We Charity scandal, which involved granting a massive sole-source contract to an organization with close ties to Trudeau's family. These events created a pattern in the minds of some voters, leading to a deep-seated erosion of trust. This erosion of trust is also tied to regional tensions, particularly what's known as Western alienation. This is the long-standing feeling, especially in Alberta and Saskatchewan, that the federal government is indifferent or even hostile to their interests. The combination of the carbon tax, pipeline struggles, and legislation like Bill C-69, which overhauled the environmental assessment process for major projects, has poured fuel on this fire. People in the West often feel that their contributions to the Canadian economy, largely through the energy sector, are taken for granted or even vilified by Ottawa and Central Canada. They see federal policies that seem to benefit other regions at their expense. This has led to a rise in separatist sentiment and a feeling that their voices simply are unheard in the nation's capital. When the Prime Minister is seen as championing policies that directly harm their primary industry, it's no surprise that his popularity in the region plummets. It's a deep-seated friction between provincial and federal priorities. Finally, let's touch on leadership style. When Justin Trudeau first came to power, his communication-focused, charismatic style was seen as a breath of fresh air. He excelled on the world stage, and his use of social media and public appearances connected with many people, especially younger voters. He presented an image of a modern, empathetic leader. Over time, however, this strength has also become a source of criticism. Some now perceive his style as being more about photo ops and sunny ways rhetoric than about substance and delivering results. Critics argue that there's a disconnect between the carefully crafted public image and the actual performance of his government. They point to what they see as a lack of seriousness on major files, a tendency to give vague or non-committal answers, and a focus on virtue signaling over tangible action. For those frustrated with the economy or government policies, this style can come across as out of touch or even arrogant. The very thing that once made him popular is now seen by some as a liability, a preference for style over substance. So, as you can see, the disapproval of Justin Trudeau is not about one single thing. It's a complex mix of economic anxieties, disagreements on major policies like the carbon tax and gun control, a perceived erosion of ethical standards, deep-seated regional divisions, and a shifting perception of his leadership style. It's important to remember that Canada is a huge, diverse country, and people's views are shaped by where they live, what they do for a living, and their personal values. These criticisms are a reflection of that diversity. A policy that seems like common sense in downtown Toronto might feel like an economic attack in rural Saskatchewan. For his supporters, Trudeau is still seen as a progressive leader navigating complex global challenges, championing diversity and taking action on climate change. But for his detractors, the story is one of broken promises, economic mismanagement, and a government that has lost touch with the concerns of ordinary people. Understanding these different viewpoints is what democracy is all about. It's a continuous debate about the best path forward for the country, regardless of where you stand. Staying informed and understanding the reasons behind political support and opposition is key to being an engaged citizen. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into Canadian politics and current events. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.